Namaste. On behalf of Chairperson Uma Chigurupati and her committee, I, Honorary Secretary Radhika Agarwal, extend a warm welcome to our esteemed guest Pulela Gopichand, past President Pinky Reddy, respected past chairs, members old and new, to Flow Hyderabad 21-22 first ground event. Let us start the session by paying homage to our motherland. Please rise for the national anthem.
अधिनायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता पंजाब सिंध गुजरात मराठा द्राविड उत्कल बंगा विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उच्चल जलधि तरंगा तव शुभ नामे जागे तब शुभ आशीष मांगे गाहे तब जय गाथा जन गण मंगलदायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता जय हे जय हे जय हे जय 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 हे.
A gentle reminder to keep our mask on and maintain physical distancing. Even I am having the mask. Moving forward, ritualistic as it is to be, invoking the blessings of the Almighty, I invite our speaker, Pulela Gopichand, past President Pinky Reddy, past chairs, Manjula Reddy, Sona Chatwani, Rekha Reddy, Vani Subhash, Usha Rani Mane, and our chairperson Uma Chigurupati to kindly come forward and light the lamp. Call upon our past chairperson Usha Rani Mane and chairperson Uma Chigurupati for medal exchange.
It's funny, after 2.5 months we are exchanging the medal now. Thank you.
At the current situation, there is no doubt that the storm might continue. But our chairperson, Uma Chigurupati, with her inspired leadership and vision, is turning the pandemic into a storehouse of opportunities, keeping the members involved, engaged, and motivated. Please join me in applause as I invite chairperson Uma Chigurupati to share her welcome address.
A very good afternoon. Warm welcome to our chief guest of today, Mr. Pulela Gopichand, past President Ms. Pinky Reddy, all the past chairs, invitees, and dear friends. It's a pleasure for me to meet you all in person, finally. I'm sure things will be improved and we get to meet more often. I would like to mention a quote which is apt for Mr. Gopichand. If you persevere long enough, if you do the right things long enough, the right things will happen. Truth, thank you. Truth, determination, and perseverance are synonyms to him. Before we listen to him, I will quickly recap the work that had happened in past 75 days. The change of guard happened on the 15th of April, and it's almost 75 days now. I would like to express my gratitude to the past chairs and the cooperation of my team members in every program and initiative that was taken up. Thank you, team, my Lettuce League. The name of my team is Lettuce League. This is for the health and wellness, and to take up all the initiatives forward, we named it as Lettuce League. It is because of your support and cooperation In spite of the scary pandemic situation and lockdown, we were able to conduct programs seamlessly and able to take up many initiatives. We have started the year 2021-22 with the program Vande Mataram as a part of the celebration of 75 years of Indian independence. Honorable Vice President of India, Sri Venkaiah Naidu Garu, was the chief guest, and National President Ms. Ujjwala Singhania was the guest of honor. Women from 3 armed forces, Wing Commander Asha Vasisht, Lieutenant Commander Vartika Joshi, and Captain Shalini Singh were the guest speakers. They shared their experiences in their respective fields, which filled the audience with patriotic spirit. The next program was a health talk on women in COVID times by noted gynecologist Dr. Shashikala Kola. On the 22nd of May, we have conducted a program all about vaccines where Dr. Rachel Sella from Bharat Biotech answered many questions and apprehensions about vaccines, and Dr. Prajna Chigurupati moderated this session. This program got very wide coverage in the press. 5th of June, on the occasion of World Environmental Day, we had a program, Nurturing Nature, where our guests, Ms. Harichandana, Ms. Kavita, Dr. Sairam, and actress Samantha spoke about permaculture, hydroponics, recycling, and sustainable living, which are the need of the hour for the survival of our planet Earth. 1-2 Cha-Cha-Cha with veteran singer Mrs. Usha Uttup was like a fresh breeze for all the audience who are otherwise very much preoccupied and caught up in the pandemic. Empowering is the essence of Wiki Flow, and we have conducted 3 events back to back on the 17th, 21st, and 24th of June. In the first program, 5 of our members graduated in the first cohort incubation conducted by VHub. Mr. Jayesh Ranjan spoke at length on women in MSMEs. Next, we have the orientation by National Startup Team. On the 24th, an orientation on incubation was conducted by IIT and IIIT, where the panel members gave a glimpse into investments and funding for startups. We have started many initiatives like Learning League, a distance education program, Business League, which will facilitate business networking amongst our flow members, Empowerment League to conduct all the incubation and other startup-related programs, Feet on Fire for the health and wellness of the members, and the COVID Care Cell, where our members worked day and night to extend a helping hand in the form of arranging medicines, beds, consultation, and vaccination to the people who ever approached and connected to us. We had also provided PPE kits and N95 masks, pulse oximeters, provisions, sanitizers, dispensers, and biscuits to the district of Narayanpet upon the request of the district collector. We were very quick in reaching out to them and proud to say we are the first chapter in Pan India to reach out to people and extending support in COVID-related needs. Thank you. All this information is given in our newsletter, Lettuce Bite. Please go through. I would like to request the members to get enrolled in the empowerment-related programs to reap the benefits of the platform created for them. They can approach InHub or empowerment team members to understand more about these programs. Also, many outreach programs are happening. Those who wanted to involve or volunteer in these initiatives are welcome to join in taking them forward. Finally, I request the members to attend all the programs. The team is putting a lot of effort to curate these programs for you. All this information is available on social media handles, and you are being informed regularly through emails and WhatsApp messages. If you are not receiving the communication by any chance, please inform the Flow office. It will be addressed immediately. Once again, I am requesting the members for an active participation in all the programs. It will be a great encouragement for the team who's working very hard. Thank you so much. Also, I'm happy to announce that this year we are celebrating the completion of 20 glorious years of Flow Hyderabad. In this regard, I would like to appreciate the great work done by all the past chairpersons for laying strong foundations with discipline and commitment and building and nurturing that chapter with passion. Thank you. Thank you, past chairs. I am very proud to say Hyderabad chapter is first and foremost to carry on certain great initiatives, and the Flow Industrial Park is one of that. Once again, a big congratulations to each and everyone, and I would like to invite Ms. Pinky Reddy, our past president, and Ms. Manjula Reddy, one of the earliest past chairs, to come over and unveil the monogram.
We shall now take the privilege to distribute badges to the Executive Committee. We shall start the introduction with Core Committee. Past Chair Usharani Mane, she is 100% committed to commitment, a passionate leader with integrity and expertise, who proved leaders don't speak but exhibit their might and act as per situation and lead by example. Vice Chairperson Ritusha, a pleasant personality who is conscientious, diligent, and showcases ultimate devotion to work. She is committed to perfection.
I herewith introduce our secretary, Ms. Radhika Agarwal, a charming and a vivacious personality. She has been a winner of Mrs. India Telangana, won the titles of Mrs. Talented, Mrs. Incredible, Mrs. India Pageant 2019. She pursued Masters in Garment Manufacturing and also has been a speaker at the Economic Forum. Thank you. Over to Radhika.
Treasurer Sujita Chitiala. The 3 Ds define her: discipline, dedication, and determination. She has an eye for detail. She is the true treasurer of Flow and a treasurer for 3rd consecutive year, proving her excellence and capability towards her work. I would request our esteemed speaker, Pulela Gopichand, and Chairperson Uma Chigurupati to come forward and grace the dais. Our Chairperson Uma Chigurupati will now felicitate our esteemed guest speaker, Pulela Gopichand, with a Bidri memento. It is an exquisite metal craft that involves intricate inlay work with silver sheets. I now invite Joint Treasurer Sarika Burgu to have Mr. Gopichand autograph the flow page. Thank you, Sarika. We have highly competitive and demanding sporting arena in our country. However, India is still not a sporting nation. We do not have system, we do not have structure, but we have a dream of winning medals internationally, a dream of sport for all, a dream that tells us that sport is about learning. It is about quest for excellence, and it is about development. And the man who has helped nurture this dream, ignite this dream, is none other than Pulela Gopichand. Strong determination, strategic approach, and desire to think different, play different, and become the one what you want to. Let's hear about Pulela Gopichand's attitude and efforts that have given recognition and respect to India at world level. Now, I would like to invite Treasurer Sujita Chitiala to introduce our speaker, Pulela Gopichand.
Good afternoon. Pulela Gopichand is a former Indian badminton player. Currently, he is the Chief National Coach for the Indian National Badminton Team. He won the All England Open Badminton Championship in 2001. He received the Arjuna Award in 1999, the Dronacharya Award in 2009, and the Padma Bhushan India's third highest civilian award in 2014. He founded Pullela Gopichand Badminton Academy in 2008. The academy produced several badminton players, Saina Nehwal, PV Sindhu, Sai Praneeth, Parupalli Kashyap, Srikant Kidambi, to name a few. Saina Nehwal went to win the bronze medal at 2012 Summer Olympics and PV Sindhu the silver medal at 2016 Summer Olympics. Gopi Chand is the right role model for a generation that looks for actions to speak rather than words. Gopi's passion to win for India, aligned to his dedication for badminton, were a perfect template for hardworking youngsters. It is his ability to live and lead life by principled ideas that have provided Gopi Chand with a moral compass to push and yet inspire youngsters to achieve their potential. Welcome, Mr. Gopi Chand, the Dronacharya of today's generation.
I would like to request Chairperson Uma Chigurupati to take the session forward with our speaker Pullela Gopi.
Committed, determined, and passionate in producing the next PV Sindhu, the next Saina Nehwal, the next Kidambi Srikant. From morning till night, day in, day out, 365 days of the year after year, he is dedicated to one cause, to make Indian sport the talking point of this world.
This is like I can say a temple of badminton.
He's on the court from 4:30 till 12:30, then again from 3 to almost 7. So he has been doing this for a long time. The result is showing.
I think what's really been super help, what's really been grace, I would think, is the family's solid support. I don't think is replaceable. I think for me, if I were to talk about why Gopi Chand may not happen so often, it's the fact that it's the family's support which
Team Gopi Chand is
It's
a state-of-the-art academy with multiple. There are about 350 students who come here and train, from the highest elite sports person to the absolute youngster from the age of 5 onward. It's a brilliant effort.
So I think food, stay, recovery, training, coaches, supports team, everything is located at the academy. So if you have an interest and if you want to push yourself, this place is available for you 24/7. No kid has ever said, I don't want to come in early in the morning. Maybe it's the training which they've had from the very beginning, but if any kid in the academy, and I would say tomorrow morning you pick the youngest of the kids and say, Gopi sir will come in the morning to train you, will you come at 4:15? And I'm sure they'll say yes. And that's the beauty of the sport itself.
Started way back, and since then has already given India multiple Commonwealth medals, the 2012 London Olympic medal, the 2016 Rio Olympic medal, and now the dream lives on.
Now I don't want to waste any time. Gopi, the first question. We are a country where cricket is a religion. How did you get into badminton? What inspired you and what were the challenges and your journey? I know it will take very long, but make it as crisp as possible.
Very good evening, everyone. It's really nice to be here. I think for me, badminton starting was only by chance. I lived in Hyderabad. My father was working in a bank and he got transferred to Hyderabad. We somehow were living close to the Lal Bahadur Stadium. We were staying in the same apartment as Krishna Prasad Garu and Uma. And from there, every summer I used to kind of go play a lot of cricket. I broke a few window panes that summer. I had a sunstroke because I was playing too much in the sun. My parents decided to take me to the stadium to join for cricket. And some of cricket was full and there was no admissions in cricket. So then the next choice was to play tennis. And somehow my mom and dad decided against it. Later I came to know that they decided against it because there were too many cars parked outside. They thought it looks like a rich man's sport. So they took me to the badminton stadium because it was empty. And that was the only reason why I started. I never knew that I would continue playing this long. School was luckily supportive. My parents were supportive, but never did sport actually, was never mainstream. And to make my life tougher, my brother went to IIT. So, so it wasn't the easiest of it. So luckily for me, there was a year after my 12th where I was given a choice to play. And they said, if you perform well, you can continue. Otherwise, you will have to join engineering. And luckily in that year, I won the junior nationals. More importantly, I got a job in Tata Steel. And that was actually the beginning of my career. And from then on, every step I took, I could see the next step possible. And when I went to the next, there were another 2 steps which were possible. And that was the only reason I continued to play the sport. It was never that I dreamt about becoming an All England champion or having an academy or producing players because I don't think I had the exposure to dream so big. I would have stopped somewhere in between. So for me, the whole thing was, I was involved in playing. I loved playing the sport. And when I reached another place, I realized that the next step was not too far. And I needed to plan, and somehow, by God's grace, everything flowed. And it's been a dream journey all through.
1994, multiple injuries, multiple surgeries. And later on, from 1996 onwards, I think continuously you started winning all the medals, whatever we know. What was the journey and how did it happen? How did you come back? Because one after another, I remember very well how many surgeries, and what did you do and how did you face that? You're quite young then.
I was one of the best players in the country going through 94. I started winning and I was #1 ranked in 94. I was playing the finals of the national games. I reached the finals of the singles, and the same day in the morning I was playing the semi-finals of the doubles. And I collided with my partner. It was an accident on court. We both jumped. I landed and then he landed on my leg. I tore the anterior cruciate ligament of my left knee, and the knee joint is a big part in badminton. The left knee is big, the anterior cruciate ligament is big. Nobody before me had ever recovered from an injury of that nature. In fact, even now people, not many even till date have actually recovered fully from that. The only person who could get back was Carolina Marin, who again got injured before this Olympics. But luckily I had a doctor, Dr. Ashok Rajgopal in Delhi. Dad was posted in Delhi at that time. So we went there, got the surgery done. But it wasn't so smooth because it took me a year to come back. But then again in 96 I had another surgery. This time when I went to Scotland to play the World Championships, I had another injury and then had to come back for a surgery. And then I was playing in CCI Bombay, and I had another fall and another surgery in 98. So it was like up and down in those times. The only thing which for me really brought me back was my love for the sport. For me, I didn't know anything outside of the sport. I didn't have an alternate plan. I wasn't smart enough to think of many other options, or I was not at all talented in the other stuff. Neither was I interested in studies too much. So I had to find my happiness, my success, my life back in the sport. So I gave it all I have. I was very fortunate that at that time when books weren't, when TV and internet weren't really there, books were majorly, I really loved reading. I picked a lot of books where I could read. I could also get a lot of strength and support from yoga and meditation. I was deeply influenced by Sri Ravi Shankar and the art of living, something which I followed very religiously. Today, at times when we have psychologists and stuff, it's okay. But back then, I had to find my own psychologist, and the yoga and meditation and the gurus were, in a sense, the people who made me stronger. But at the end of the day, I think it was just that I had no fallback plan. I have dived into it with no option but to swim out, and that's what I did.
But it is not easy. You know, 5 years you won continuously and winning All England Open, badminton championship, and also the SARC also happened in 1996. You know, it is a tremendous effect. And now tell me, when did you go into Himalayas? Not too many people know about it.
As a family friend, she has access to many more things than the other people. But it is just that extension of my interest in yoga and meditation. And I would find time to go, and my favorite spots were beyond Rishikesh. And I would have a guide with me whom I would take along, and we would trek. And there was a lot of those times. So that was not too many, but about 10 days in a year is when we could pick. That was every year in the winters, between 20th December to 1st of Jan, when there were no tournaments and nothing was happening around, is when I would go off.
So, coming back to the academy, what inspired you to start the academy?
Luck in my entire career as a player, and it actually, just to rewind a little bit, when we were playing sport here, today when we look at badminton, we know that Telangana, Andhra Pradesh is a big name in the sport. But back then we didn't even have a national champion from Hyderabad. So when we went to the nationals, the common joke was, ये आंध्रा टीम आया, ये एक खेलने के कपड़े लेके आते हैं, but 3 घूमने के कपड़े लेके आते हैं. So we would be losing in the first round. In South Zone also, we would be the 4th we would only beat Pondicherry and nobody else. And Kerala, Tamil Nadu and Karnataka were better than us. So typically, we were just going for fun, to say. And also, internationally also, it was pretty much the same when I started playing. So when I started moving up the journey, I learnt a lot from my coaches. I learnt a lot from trial and error. I learned a lot going abroad and playing in different places. And somehow when I won the All England, I realized around the time when I won the All England, I realized that I had a formula which I knew was possible, that this is the formula which you need to use to win. Unfortunately, I didn't have the body to make my formula work. And it was my desire that I knew this would work. I didn't have the body. So how do I use it? I had to find people who would use it. So I found young bodies who could use it. And when that is, to put it in a short sense. But the challenges growing up were very different. I would go to the stadium. Today we talk about, say, psychologists, physiologists, nutrition or biomechanics and a lot of other stuff. Back then it was very fundamental. We had a a person called Mehboob Saab. And if I had desired that I have somebody should come, it was that person because he was the watchman of the stadium. In the sense, I would reach in the morning and I would really hope that this guy comes on time. Because if he came on time, it meant that we would get to play a little more. And then coach needed to come, shuttles weren't there, players weren't there, gym wasn't open, there would be a marriage or there would be a function and the stadium was closed. Every time LB was closed because Lal Bahadur Stadium was closed because whenever there were elections for 3 months, ballot boxes were kept. We couldn't afford shuttles, so we were playing more football than badminton. So almost when I won the All England, it almost felt that if I can win the All England, there are many others who can win. And I had this formula. So it was kind of that burning desire to want to build something. Or because when I went, also one of the sad experiences which I had was I went to Indonesia to train, almost uninvited to a sense that I'll go there and see they will allow me kind of a thing. But I went there, they didn't allow me. These sort of liberal nations of Europe, like Denmark, also did not allow me to train with their national teams. So I had no option but to find my own formula for winning. So it was kind of an uphill task because I didn't see an option of Indians training abroad to win. So I had to build that place. So the idea of the academy was there. Luckily, when I had won the All England, I had an opportunity to build it. And I left every other desire and made this as my single point focus. And that really helped.
That's wonderful. And we should call it as a factory, producing so many, sports persons, Saina, Sindhu, Sai Praneeth, Srikanth, name, it's fantastic. I would like to ask you, any sport, it needs a lot of discipline and you are a strict disciplinarian, right? You agree with that? So, I would like to understand how, during early stages, they can adapt, they will listen to you. Once they make some name and all, will they follow those kind of instructions? I know it is a bit delicate question, but how do you experience as a trainer?
Well, one is we don't really work in ideal scenarios in that sense. Fun is a big element of training. For a kid to be disciplined, it's impossible. He can listen, and you might listen to people once, twice, thrice, but to do it every time is going to be tough. So I think as a training, as an academy, as a coach, I think to make fun a big part of your training is very, very important. Discipline is important, but it comes, you have to taste success, you want to want success, for then you will push yourself. So I think it's love, passion, fun, all of these are very important words, more than I would say discipline, determination and hard work. The same words of discipline, hard work sound very dry in that sense. But if you add these words of love, passion, liking, all of them, then it becomes more fluid, more nicer to actually do that. So for me, there is discipline, but there is fun involved. There is, people come there eventually because they like what they're doing. So the discipline is not like a sacrifice, you're missing something, but you're actually doing this because you're liking it. And what I had said in that interview is, every kid who's getting up at 4:30 and saying, if you ask them, will you study at 4:30? No way. You say 6 o'clock? No way. 8 o'clock? No way. But if you tell them, come to the morning to the academy at 4 o'clock, they would love to come because it's still fun. So I think that element is very important. Now, we all bring them up in a particular model, and this is where I think we as a culture also have a challenge, because the Chinese have a certain model, the Japanese, Chinese, Koreans, as culturally they would have a certain model which is very strict, very hierarchy driven, very culture driven. The Europeans have one which is more educated, professional, and very independent in that decision. We as a country kind of struggle with us not being there in an Indian cultural background or an Asian cultural background and also of a Western background. So we kind of lose it in between, because there's some thought which is coming which of a Gurukul system, but there's also marketing and branding and professionalism of the other nature. So there is bound to be conflict when this happens. So as an academy, I've had my challenges with top players, and I have to make a choice between choosing whether it's the academy, whether it's the younger players, or whether I hang on with the players and let the discipline of the academy shift by. So it's a choice which you make. It's a tough choice, because there are no precedents. There's no book which is telling you this is right and this is wrong. So people could interpret it, and you could, but eventually it's your decision what you have to do. So it's, for me, I think it's an evolving journey based on the conditions and stuff. But I still believe that a system should be in place which ensures that the younger players are looking at the top position and learning. And discipline is driven from the top and not from the bottom.
Right. Wonderful. That's wonderful. And can you see the difference of when you have started and what is happening now, and the determination in the players? Do you think, can you relate these two generations?
Yeah, I think today the generation is far more aggressive, they're far more confident. So one example which I could give is when we went to 2000 Sydney, we went to the games in 96 or 2000. In the entire contingent, they, no exaggeration, probably about 95% of us went not hoping that we'll win a medal or something, but we were just happy to be there. We wanted to be at the inaugural march past. We wanted to be at the closing. We wanted to collect pins and photographs, and that was a major drive for us. And the blazer which said Olympics, and that was major, big. And when we lost, we lost. We came back. It was like achievement to go there was the achievement. But today, when people go to Tokyo, at the end of it, and just a pre-example of, say, Rio, where 116 member team went, and we won maybe 2 medals. We did win 2 medals. But everybody who went there went with a thought of performance. And when we lost, everybody was unhappy. When they lost, everybody was unhappy. So the kind of difference it is that in the closing in Sydney and in those times, we would have people saying, please, I want to attend the closing ceremony. And in 2016 Rio, the Indian Olympic Association almost had to put a diktat saying, we need you to come here, because there was not even one athlete ready to go to the closing ceremony. Say, we've lost, we want to go back, we don't want to enjoy this place anymore. So it's kind of that basic urge to go abroad, the basic urge to see things abroad or stay abroad, that is finished, that's over. Now they want to go there to perform, and if they don't perform there, they don't like it. So this is something which is amazing, which I think the confidence of the younger generation is huge, which is a huge positive. The one thing which I struggle is the long-term vision versus the short-term benefit kind of a thing. So I think when we used to have tournaments, we would have a tournament once at the end of a year. We had one state championship, one district, one state, one nationals, and maybe two internationals. But many of us, it used to be 3 or 4 tournaments. And we would wait 6 months for a tournament. And we would still train on day one of the 6 months rigorously. But today, if I have to make him work for 6 months, I have to have 20 breaks in between where I have to have 20 small targets. So that long term is something which is missing. So this is where I think if I have to put a point about the short term thing, I would, but in general, the confidence, the urge, the want to do it is much more.
Gopi, you have done a lot of work in physical literacy. You had given a presentation to Prime Minister Modi also. Can you just explain what is that?
Well, it was, this was 2015, and I was training players for the Olympics. And it was the summer, and I was just throwing shuttles to a young kid. And this girl was a 13-year-old, and I just threw a shuttle from 5 feet, 6 feet away, and she dropped it. And I was kind of a bit annoyed a little bit because I thought she was not focused enough. And I threw the next one and she dropped that, and I said, there were 20 other kids around, so I moved on. At the end of the class, she came back and asked, "Sir, teach me how to catch." And this was something which was a big shocker for me because I never knew that I would have to answer a question like this. And then I went back into things because, and I just reflected on many other things in my own head. And I said, if I don't walk as a kid who is 1 year old, 1.5, then there is suddenly panic. The grandmother or mother is going to say, what's wrong with his legs? Let's hold his hand. But if he is 3 or 4, and if he doesn't catch or throw or jump, we almost kind of sideline the kid saying, okay, little sloppy, little cute, chubby, and then we kind of put them to the side. And in class also, there is this kind of subtle neglect which has happened, where the teacher, sports teacher is actually saying, oh, these 3 in Currendo, let the others play. Even if they're picked up in a team, the leader of the team is actually saying, let this guy stay in that third man in cricket, or let's cover this girl to ensure that she doesn't stop us from winning. Because slowly people get sidelined if you don't have the genes to be physically superb. And then that leaves a dent in the minds of people. And they never take up sport in their life again. And this was my own reflection of my own journey, because missing a lot of classes in school, I would hate maths and physics because I could never understand head or tail of it. And today also, if you say maths, then I'm running the other way. And I just imagine if I had the same experience in my physical education class or in my sports, then I would probably have the same experience growing up. I can live without a physics class in life, but if I don't enjoy physical activity in the present circumstance, what will happen to me is the question which I had. And this started actually, I started debating professional sport, because the whole Olympic model is actually driven on this one, and we are very proud of it. When you look at the Olympics, they talk about it, that 1 in every 1,000 kids who plays becomes a national level athlete. Out of every 100 national champions, 1 becomes an Olympian. Sorry, out of every 1,000 national champions, 1 Olympian is made. And out of every 100 Olympians, 1 medalist is made. They say it proudly, but on the reverse side, if you look at it, everybody who's left out is actually repulsing and going out of the system. So what happens is the entire model is actually throwing people away, whereas we should be integrating people, because the benefit of sport is much beyond medals. And that fundamental issue was something which was very, very critical for me to understand. And this came up as a big shocker for me because I had spent about 30 years in sport till 2015. And I was, from 85 to 2015, I had spent day in and day out in sport. And it was so close to me that I couldn't see it. And it was so fundamental that I missed the point. And everybody around was missing the point. And for me, this became a big issue for me because for me, then every kid became important. And I started to very basic understanding of questions because I was just starting to think, and the research is showing that physical activity builds neurons. Physical activity is the only thing which builds neurons, almost to the point where they're saying that if you're not physically active, you're not going to activate your brain cells. And for me, I started to think, if I'm living in an apartment, how many kids in Bombay would actually say that I have run to the fastest I can, or I have thrown the ball to the furthest it can go, or jumped to the highest it can? I have never. So a person who cannot even, as a kid, if I can't explore the boundaries of my physical being, how am I going to widen my horizon and be a visionary in any sense? So this became very and deep rooted, and I started questioning myself, and this became a whole thesis and a dialogue with myself. And then I didn't know where to take this up. I went to the Prime Minister also. I told him, boss, this is what's happening. And it's great that because after that, almost about 7 to 8 Mann Ki Baats, he actually spoke about sport between 2015 to 16. And today, whether it's Khelo India or Fit India or Yoga Day or sport, where he's telling Olympians, even the Olympic team, he said it's not whether it's you win or lose, but to give it your 100% is what is important. So I think for me, this whole experience was great. For a year and a half after that, for a few months after that, I was a little doubtful what to do, what not to do. I went to the Olympics almost in that dilemma, just saying this is the last Olympics I'm going to do, and end it. But truly, the person and this is where I really love the great visionaries of our nation. J.R.D. Tata gave this one statement, and that was for me the turning point or an end to this kind of a dilemma. Because he says a nation doesn't become great when we just remove poverty. It becomes great when we give an opportunity for the talented few to shine to be the best in the world. And that statement for me is what my philosophy stands on, that every kid needs to be and has a right to be the best version of himself or herself, because physical activity for life is a very important thing. And if there is a talent among any of those kids, wherever they are in this country, we as a nation owe it to them to ensure that they become the best in the world. And this for me is what is sport for me today.
You know, in our country, of course, sports, many people are like, you just play only one game. You know, they don't take up multiple games. Like if one person is playing a badminton, it is only a badminton. They don't play the other games. What kind of impact do you think kids, you know, it will impact the kids? Kids or anybody, even the grown-ups also.
I think one, especially for kids, what an adult can learn in 6 months, a kid can learn in 1 week. So I think it's very important that we make kids experience a lot of things. So cycling, jumping, diving, throwing, all of these things have to be done early on different planes, whether it's a slippery ground, whether it's an uneven terrain, or whether it's on water, on sand, on everything. So I think to experience different surfaces, different activities as a kid, to have an imprint of it for life is very, very critical. The second thing is, and this with complete honesty in sport, with having seen so much of success in sport, I know that if you take up sport, the chance of you making it to the highest level is very, very limited. Although, although as a kid, I've benefited from the fact that I didn't have a fallback option. And I also believe that as people, as entrepreneurs, as anybody, we should not have a fallback option. We as entrepreneurs, or we as people who are driven on the path, should think that there is no going back.
Yes.
There's no falling back. It's the people around us and the society which has to give us that safety net. But we shouldn't think of the safety net, because that is a safe option to actually come back and say it didn't happen. When you think that coming back is not an option, you will give it all you have.
That's true.
So for me, I know that sport, when kids come and I tell them that you're going to be a world champion, the very likelihood that they may not. But unless the kid believes that he is, he's not going to give it all he has. So it's very important that they give it that 100%. So as students of the sport, even for betterment of the particular sport, it is important you train yourself in different ways. Because if you play singular sport, your chances of injuries later in life is much more. Your ability to learn different things and be smarter is not the same as if you play a singular sport. So as kids, for all of you in a position to advise kids, play multi-sport, specialize only at a stage which is a little later. The basic principle should be that, am I using my hands enough? Am I using my legs enough? Am I using team enough? Am I playing on different surfaces enough? And these are questions we should ask, and hopefully we'll find answers in this.
Wonderful. So, I think from now onwards, we should encourage the kids to play more games.
And on the side note, and I think we all give a lot of importance to sport, and today I think especially people here, I'm sure, would understand what sport is and the importance of sport. But truly, for me, when I look back at the entire journey, I used to go to, when we were in Matrushri apartments, for me, I remember those days where you come before badminton, maybe there were a couple of years, or Saturday, Sundays. You throw the bag at 3:30, the school finishes, and 3:35 you're there. And you go call people. And for us, we don't value that playing. But think of it, that these people, when I went out and called people, I'm urging them, I'm knocking on doors, I'm telling auntie, send this boy, or send him, and I'm shouting, and I'm figuring out ways to communicate to get the people there. We all come together, we don't have anything, we might have a bat and a ball, we might play cricket, we don't have anything, we innovate, we play hide and seek, we play 7 stones, we play skipping or ring, whatever is that, we play that. And among 5 people, we are deciding which game we should play. Your communication skills, your ability to work as a team, your ability, because we've never had, and just reflect on it, we've never had anybody teaching us. So watching, imitating was a big step in learning. And today, for anything, we want a coach. So I think that we miss out. And then we make 2 leaders, and we follow those leaders. So leadership qualities, being part of a team. And if you lose in that match, and if the team loses because of you, you know how much of taunting happens. And then that pressure is there for you to live with. So life lessons are learned so much in just going out and playing that we forget the fun of it. I think to go back, we need to actually look at it very differently. Sport has to go beyond medals. Sport has to go beyond organized things, in the sense for the ability to just go and communicate with kids, select a leader, select rules. It's raining in between, and then you have to find a fallback third option. You've broken a window pane, you have to scatter and run away. I think these are great lessons in life which we need to kind of learn. And it comes out of organized sport. It doesn't come by a coach standing there and telling you what to do. It only gets you maybe discipline and the being on time and a certain set. But I think the real skills of life are also learned in that unorganized sport. So it's very, very important that we need to revive that structure back where kids go out and just play. And that I think is, we've missed the point in our pursuit of organizing everything.
I totally agree. I'm going back to the earlier days again. You know, that aerated drinks, when they approached you for, advertising or endorsing, you said no. Later I know, the struggle what you had gone through while building the Gopi Chand Academy. During that struggle, did you ever think that, I would have accepted that? Or, any of the family members, did they express that, that kind of...
Never did that point come across so much. I believed something strongly, and I just did it because I couldn't live with a decision. If I had endorsed that drink for the money or for the fame, it would have stick to me for life, and it would have been very difficult for me to handle that every day. So it was a decision. I'm happy the family agreed and supported. Yes, we've had tough times to build the academy, it had not been easy. But never did this point come across as a stumbling block, because it was almost like from where we started on our journey to where we are today, we've been on a plus so much, either in my career as a player to what I've achieved, or financially, or fame-wise, or whatever. It's always been a plus. So I regard even a small increment as a big thing, and it never crossed my mind that I needed to do something which I didn't believe to go ahead in life.
No, I want to ask this question because everyone should know, sticking to those values, saying no, you don't believe that, and you said no, and you stuck to that. That's fantastic actually, and it needs, I think that is more important than your all the medals. That's what for me, I always feel that way. Also, you are training, a lot of para-Olympians and, economically backward, children. How are you able to do, and how are you, the financial support and all, how are you able to manage?
I think we've had our share of challenges between 2004 till 13, 14. We were actually going through a rough period. But luckily, post 2016, things have been much better. It's also been a shift in the policy of government. They've been a lot more supportive. Really thankful to all of them. I think the Telangana government, where KCR Garu has been very supportive, or the central government through its Sports Authority of India has been very supportive. So things have been much better off. For me today, when I look back, and you've mentioned two of the things, whether it's para badminton, where we have a world champion called Mansi Joshi, whom we've been training. It's been for me, she was an inspiration, because when she came up and said, "Sir, teach me," then I was like, I have so many athletes, what are we doing? But then when you look at them and what they've actually achieved and what impact it has, it is tremendous. And since I have about, say, 10 athletes, and sad to say this, but and I've seen the World Championships, and this is where I hope you can relate to, because for me this was very, very important, and this was like a moment where things changed my perspective. A person who's doesn't have a foot, and he is being referred to as Langda. We Kuntadu, we do. This is what we typically would call him. And wherever he is walking, this is the general mindset which comes. And I go to this World Championships, I'm sitting at the World Championship. This guy, Pramod, is playing this opponent from England. This is in Basel, this is at the World Championships. And then the entire European crowd is supporting this guy from Europe. And there's about 500 people in the audience. And everybody is shouting and cheering for him. And this one guy goes out there and he starts to fight back. And we were about 20 of us. We made noise equal to that of 500 people. And then as time went by, some of the non-English fans started supporting India. And then by the end of the match, it was like India, India, India as a reverberation going in the entire stadium. And then he wins, he takes off his shirt and then he rolls it, throws it in the crowd and he's celebrating. I think that sense of achievement, that sense of pride, nothing can give. To that person, nothing can give. And that is what is important. We have people who are dwarf category. And I think wherever you go, they will be ridiculed. But on court, they are actually being seen as pride. And for me, that is very important. So when we look at impact of sport, so it almost feels that there is a certain percentage, it's a very, very minute percentage now, but when para sport becomes big, there will be, if you are in an economically down population, challenged population, you might have actually kids who are saying, maybe when the kid is born, they're saying, shit, this kid has got a difficulty physically, but very soon they might say, oh, there is a possibility that he could become a champion on the para sport side. So I am seeing that possibility and that hope for the entire community come up. And that is possible. Because today when you see a Jajaria win 2 Olympic medals, and last time he got about 5 crores of rupees, and then the entire community has kind of got up. And that is huge. I think transgenders is another one. It's inclusiveness of sport. It's unfortunate that sport cannot remain for the genetically advantaged. I think we need to look beyond and we need to include people and respect for sports persons. This is primary, this is fundamental, and somehow we've missed the point. And for me, I just start to feel, because I interact with them and I feel very strongly for each of these categories. And I do believe that there is a story which is there for each one and for us to learn from their stories. Yes, it's.
I know a lot of kids had undergone a lot of stress during this pandemic, and you spent a lot of time, online with them. What did you do? How did you entertain them?
I think
I think entertain is not a word. How did you channelize their energies?
By entertaining them. I think one of the things we did as a smart strategy was that May 27th we started online coaching classes. March 27th of the 2020. And we started at 6 o'clock. The basic question was, if I am free the whole day, why should I get up at 6? That's the first question, kids. And the point is, if I don't wake them up at 6, they're not going to sleep at 10. And if they're not going to sleep at 10, they're going to use the phone till 12. And then I have to rewind and undo these habits when they come back. So I think one of the important things was to actually start it and put some. So we had 2 sessions, morning one, evening one, afternoon we had one more class. We just kept them busy, and that really helped. And it was fun. And what I realized is that pressure has its value at a senior level. But for kids, I think to just have fun and let them be, they are fine. I think let the parents have the stress, let the kids not do it. So we've kind of managed to do that. Even now, when we are starting our coaching back, we would have 5 sessions to 1 session off, 5 sessions playing and 1 session off. Now we have only 3 sessions playing and 1 session off. Even in those 3 sessions of playing, we have a lot of fun elements so that they're slowly getting back into the sport. Why I'm saying this is that I see schools trying to get back, and they think that kids have left and they've come back to the same place. They are not coming back to the same place. You will have to make the transition very, very slowly. Otherwise, they're going to break. So I think it's very important to be careful to understand that they've lost social skills. They're not going to be the same again. Their physical abilities are going to be different. They're mentally probably doing different things. We need to slowly wean them away from that and get them back into a routine. So I think somewhere we need to go slow. Kids have been affected a lot, and I see it very often. So I think back off on the pressure, take it easy. It doesn't matter whether they become stars or players or champion students. Let them get back their life, and slowly we'll evolve is what my thinking has been.
Great advice to all the young mothers here. So, I would like to ask you 3 generations of women in your life: mother, wife, daughter. Actually, not too many know that Lakshmi, his wife, is an Olympian. Now, daughter Gayatri. What kind of pressure? Okay, first you tell me about the women in your life. What kind of impact?
I think huge. I'm also very fortunate that I have an 87-year-old grandmother who's living with us. And I think for me, this whole journey, and for me, my mom has been a huge pillar, support then and now. Wife has been super supportive all through. And I got away with doing some crazy things, in the sense. We went for our first holiday, so to say, after about 8 years of marriage. So we got away with doing stuff which was unreal. But luckily, they've all been very, very supportive. And I don't think this journey would have been possible without them. Because one was Gopichand, the coach, but for him to be active, he shouldn't have issues around. And I think they ensured that I didn't have any of those at the back end. So I could really spend time at the academy, coaching all of the time. So that's been something which is very good. My daughter Gayatri, very proud of what she's achieved. She's been the youngest member of a team which she played at the Asian Games. That's a good thing. So people ask about her being a world champion or the next big thing. I don't even care. I'm happy where she is. And if she really wants to, and if she pushes, and she loves the sport, but it's her journey. It's her journey, and it's a tough journey. So she'll have to walk that path herself and move on. But for me, women are very, very committed, or they're very easygoing. So I find two opposite sets all the time, in the sense either you're laid back or with you're pushing yourself. But one thing I would really want to talk, and it's not about men or women, it's in general, is that sometimes life gives us an opportunity to work and a time for us to work. I think at that time we need to work. And sometimes it just takes away that opportunity because there's something more pressing at home. I think at that time, I think it's important to back off and to take precedence of what is important. And we can catch up with work later. And I don't think we should regret about missing out.
Yes.
And there will be opportunities coming again and again. We need to be open to it. So for me, this is something which I really see in my life and also in the lives of people around. Sometimes you really want to do it, but it's not all the time that you have the circumstances which are needed for you to do it, or it doesn't work out. So I think at those times it's just okay to let go, and don't fight it so much. It's okay. Just relax. It doesn't matter. And also it's something very important that today when I look back, and this is the example which I have between careers and careers. And when I look, although many of what I say is I can articulate it now, but when I did it, maybe it just was an instinct which would work. Like my playing days, I wasn't that old that I had to leave, but I just left playing and I took up coaching with a vengeance. Like I wanted to coach, kind of a thing. So it's almost like you're falling off the cliff and you have a choice of letting go at your own will and relaxing during the fall, or struggling and regretting during the fall. And somewhere at some point of time, I feel when you know that it's going to fall, might as well just take the plunge into the unknown and be prepared for the fall so that you're prepared for your next jump up, rather than be shocked and regret about the fall. So I think it's very important to let go of a few things, to relax when you're not doing well, and to actually wait for your opportunity to bounce back. And over time, I've seen opportunities will come. Maybe I don't know if it's your hands or if it's your stars or if it's your work or whatever. But I think if you have an opportunity, grab it with both hands. And if not, just wait for your time, get stronger, especially physically during that time, and stay mentally alert, and your time will come, is what I believe.
Wonderful. So I think this will be my final question. Arjuna, Padma Shri, Padma Bhushan, Rajiv Khel Ratna, Dronacharya, and a person who produced the maximum Arjunas. What next?
I think I'm happy with what I have. I've never really looked at it in a sense, but probably the reason could be that these awards came in a way much easier and I didn't have to wait for them. So probably I don't have an urge that I should get more or something, but till now things have been very different. They've always been something which I never really thought of so much, and I'm sure they're great things for me, for Indian sport, for the academy, and let's see what life has in store.
All the best for the Olympics. I know you're all leaving in the middle of the month, and the whole nation is looking forward, and all the best. And this is Gopi Chand, the epitome of honesty, simplicity, and humbleness, which I think the next generation should carry those values. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gopichand, for sharing your inspiring and motivating journey. A thought that crosses my mind is that a coach is very much like a Ficky flow, touching, empowering, and changing lives. Now, I would like to invite our members to come forward with their questions. We have put 2 mics. You all can just go and, the mics wouldn't be passed to you. We have the stable mics there.
So I have a very difficult question. With this pandemic, what happened is children are more prone to virtual gaming. So, and there is a lot of money also involved, even they have championships. How do you think this will affect the children's health? And how, as a parent, we should fight with this virtual gaming and get them towards this gaming? Because again, socializing has become again very difficult in this pandemic situation.
Unfortunately, no easy answer for you. Because what we are actually dealing with is a sport where entertainment is given to you in your hands with very little effort, and also every now and then there is an applause which is happening. Just look at that, in the sense you play for 5 minutes, they'll give you a star, then they'll give you claps will come, and then they'll give you a balloon will come. So there's a lot of applause which comes. I think one of the things which I have seen people talk who are having these challenges is to actually ensure that there's a kind of a discipline and a norm that you should not get this much of time, more than this much of time with your phones or with your gadgets. And the second thing is somehow ensure that they start at least playing in small bubbles. They're able to play some kind of games. I think that will be very important. Especially in the evenings, have a cutoff at maybe 8:30 or 9, so that they don't have phones after that is something which is important. But the most important thing again is applause. I think we need to encourage them to play physical sport. And wherever we are, I think just to play is winning is what our mindset should be. And we should not wait for them to win till we clap. I think they just go out and, oh, lovely, you're playing very well. That should be the general norm, because we are competing against those kind of softwares, and we need to figure that we need to be appreciative more than ever before. Thank you.
It's a pleasure to listen to your journey. And I'm myself a badminton player during my childhood, I would say.
Little louder, please.
Okay. It's a pleasure to have you, sir, and listen to your journey. And I'm myself a badminton player, and I play on and off. I mean, not so regular, I would say. But I've been watching your journeys because I think we almost belong to the same era. So I remember watching you and your wife playing at the LV Stadium also. So one question that I have is, actually the badminton journey, if you look at the how it got highlighted was from Mr. Prakash Padukone, your mentor as well. That was way back in 1980. Then again, I think it was Mr. Syed Modi sir, who was the champion for almost like 8 years, pretty much 8 years. Of course, followed by you. So if you see the first win and the second win, there was a gap of almost 2 decades. And post 2001, probably after you, and from 2004, and then we have the sub-junior, and of course, Saina Nehwal. Now we have Sindhu and Srikanth and all. On the whole, if you see, it's generally, men's singles, or women's singles or sub-junior singles. But if you see the sport in doubles, I would say in mixed doubles, probably Gutta Jwala was there prior to 2010. And probably now we can see Satvik Sai Reddy and Sikki Reddy in the mixed doubles thing. So why don't we have, participation in doubles, men's doubles, mixed doubles, and women's doubles? At the same time, if you were to compare our players and the number of players who are actually playing or who have been winning against the Southeast Asian countries of, say, Thailand, Malaysia, or Indonesia, we actually see every 2 years you have in every segment, that is in every category, you have multiple players who are actually reaching to a certain level. But in India, you actually come across 1 player or 2 players who is for a long tenure, you just find them. Can't we actually improve that?
I think it's a deep badminton-related question.
Yeah, it's a passion for that because I still play and I would love to. Thank you.
I think, yes, to actually answer to that question, I think there are a lot of issues why people choose singles ahead of doubles. It is larger issues because if you go for a job interview, singles players are given precedence or preference ahead of doubles players. So even if you're a doubles player, you go to a job interview or trials, they make you play singles. So it starts off with that. Its second point is when you have contracts, if you're a top 10 doubles player versus a top 10 singles player, they make differential money. So that's one issue. So people taking up the sport is one issue because they don't have role models. If you have a Saina and a Sindhu and a Srikanth and a Sai, in doubles we don't have the same level of role models. So they kind of starting point is a problem. Parents saying if the kid says I will take doubles, the parents are saying forget it, might as well stop playing. Or the organization is also saying that. It is unfortunate and it is not nice that this is happening, but it's a larger, deeper issue, and it is being addressed now a lot better than what it was maybe 10 years ago, but it will take a longer period of time for us to really sort this issue out as much as the other Asian countries have done, because they've had a culture of strong doubles heroes for many, many years. In the sense, you would have a Park Jubung from Korea, you would have the Sidek brothers from Malaysia, you would have the Christine Hadinata kind of players from Indonesia, Leongbo Tanbinki from China. So they all had, and all of these players are players of the 80s whom I'm talking about. So we know of those. So we don't have any of those kind of role models from our country. So we might take, it's a chicken and egg situation. Hopefully we'll win some big event. And hopefully this Olympics, if we have Satvik and Chirag win, they could become household names, and the next kid who picks up the racket will say, I will become a Satvik, and that is when things will change. To be honest, I don't have a proper answer to this. So whatever I say might just be a blabbering, so I would rather refrain from saying it. But truly, I think, just on a lighter note, I think Drona and the whole story, we look at Dronacharya as a epitome of gurus. Na? But actually how successful he was as a guru, it's himself. And the life of Dronacharya itself is a big question mark. And that's something which at some point somebody has to debate.
Any more questions?
Whenever, I think you're all most welcome. In fact, we are in the process of building, thanks to the Kotak Bank. We are actually supported by them. We are building 6 more badminton courts. We are building a sports science center and a coach development center. So this is something which we will be finishing in January this coming year. And that's something which it will have a 200-meter running track as well. So it will be one of the nicest places when it finishes off. Of course, you're welcome even before that. But after that, I would definitely invite all of you to come and be part of it.
So no more questions?
Gachibowli.
So is the new location going to be in Hyderabad?
Yeah, please go ahead.
So where is the location for the
It's
new place?
Gachibowli. It's in the same campus where we are.
Okay. Do you plan to establish in another location as well?
No.
Because I'm sure that many people from India would like to, have you as a coach. Do you want to have, in future
I
or
think
something?
the very idea of growth and making what we have done possible in many places is what we are trying to do by this coach development work project. So many of these years have been spent in producing players, but for us to be successful, it's very important that we have coaches who are dedicated and knowledgeable. And the very idea of the Coach Development Center is that we're able to produce such kind of coaches who can take this pan-India, because talent is across the country for sure, and we want to access that.
Thank you, sir. It's very important that many Indians, they get a chance to have you as a coach. I mean, we are lucky that you're in Hyderabad and we're getting a chance to be recognized as a, participants in Olympics.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for addressing all our queries and clarifying the doubts. I will now request Vice Chairperson Ritu Shah to deliver her vote of thanks.
Good evening, dear friends. Success isn't given, it's earned. On the track, on the field, in the gym, with blood, sweat, and the occasional tear. Because champions, as said Arjunas, kept playing until they got it right. On this note, I, Ritu Shah, take this opportunity on behalf of Fikiflow Hyderabad to thank our speaker, Pullela Gopichand, the Dronacharya of Indian badminton. Sir, today, after listening to you, the Josh is too high. So how's the Josh? Hi. Don't tell them how good you are. Just show them. Thank you for your time and thoughts, sir. Thank you, Ms. Uma Chigurupati, Flow Hyderabad chairperson, for moderating the session so very well. I extend my gratitude to our sponsors, Platinum sponsor Greenco, Gold sponsors Granules India, and branding partner RBC. Thank you, hotel and staff of ITC Kohinoor, for the warm hospitality extended. Thank you, Solus Media, for always placing Fikiflow Hyderabad at the right place and time. Much appreciate the presence of all our past chairs and flow members. Your support encourages us to perform better and better. Thank you, Team 2021-22, for the commitment shown and the time invested. Ability is what you're capable of doing. Motivation determines what you do. Attitude determines how well you do it. As also the motto of the year says, together we can, with courage, capability, and compassion. Thank you and Jai Hind.